Hello everyone, welcome to this deep dive session on conversational interfaces, chatbots, etc. So I'll be the first one to speak in this session. I'll talk about Dialog Flow, which was initially called API.ai, but that got renamed a few weeks ago into Dialog Flow, which is a tool from Google which allows you to define your conversations and design those conversations. We'll speak a little bit as well about the Google Assistant and how you can actually enrich that platform using the actions on Google, let's call it a framework, in order to extend and enrich the Google Assistant. But for the design of our conversation, we'll be using Dialog Flow in the demos, etc. So I'm Guillaume Laforge. I'm a developer advocate for Google Cloud. You can follow me there on Twitter, glaforge. I've been speaking for about a year or so on this topic, and I sometimes accompany some companies into their chatbot experiences. And I'd like to start with just a few slides to quickly give some concepts, a little intro about the kind of concepts we'll be using throughout the demos. And it's also concepts that are usually also with the same names, usually, on other platforms. So it'll be certainly familiar for you with my other co-speakers. So let's say we've got two little minions. So we've got the one on the left, who's your user, basically, and the one on the right is going to be the chatbot. So let's say the first one wants to eat bananas, of course, and the chatbot may be replying, okay, how many of them do you want to eat? So there's a request, there's a response. And when you design chatbots, you define a certain number of questions or sentences or topics that a chatbot should be able to cover. And we usually call that intent. And the intent here is the user wants to eat something, okay? So it's not eating some bananas, but it's really about eating something. But inside that sentence, there's also a parameter, which is bananas. What does that little minion want to eat? It's a banana. And the entity is, if you were speaking about programming concept, it's like the class, and banana is an instance of that class. So the parameter inside my intent, that's going to be the food that the minion is going to eat. But the conversation can go on, and let's say we have some more questions coming up, like, okay, how many calories are there? We're not saying in bananas or anything like this. We're just saying how many calories are there, and the chatbot can remember that we are speaking about banana, so there are 89 calories in a banana. The important aspect here is the notion of context, which is how chatbots can remember the topic of the conversation across several requests and responses. The context can also carry, your own data or things like that. So if you want to iterate over a list or something of results, a list of results, you could do that. So intents, entities, context, and the other one I'd like to tell you about, because I'll show that as well in my demo later on. It's the notion of fulfillment. It's actually a webhook, a URL that you define to say, okay, if I need some business logic, or if I need to look up some data, for example, perhaps I have a data store that stores the number of calories per food or ingredient or something, then I'll be able to configure a special webhook, a special URL, where my chatbot platform will just send a request to, and will retrieve the data. So here, in this little example, I would have a webhook that would be called to request the number of calories for the bananas. So here are the concepts we see pretty much in every platform for designing conversational interfaces. I'd like to say a few more words about Dialog Flow versus actions on Google, etc. because we really have different concepts or tools to speak about. So Dialog Flow is really the place where we're going to design our conversations, define the intents, define the entities, etc. But Dialog Flow can be used with and without actions on Google, without the Google Assistant platform. So if you have, let's say, a Google Home, or if you've installed the iOS application for the Google Assistant, if you create your own chatbot, your own app for it, you can use Dialog Flow, but it's not necessary. You could use something else. You can use Dialog Flow. And there's a direct integration between actions on Google for creating your own apps for the Google Assistant and Dialog Flow. But Dialog Flow can also be used alone with different integration mechanisms. So if you want to create a Twitter chatbot, there's also a special integration within Dialog Flow to create Twitter chatbots, Slack chatbots, SMS chatbots with Twilio, etc. You can also, there's also REST API that you can use if you want to call directly the API of Dialog Flow. And then if you need some fulfillment, some business logic to retrieve some data or do some calculation, then Dialog Flow will use the webhook and fulfillment aspect that I mentioned earlier. In my presentation, I'll be using, for the business logic, I'll be using Cloud Functions, the Google Cloud Functions serverless platform. I'm going to talk about it, by the way, on Wednesday. But you could also ping some other URL, your own server elsewhere, not necessarily on Google's cloud. So it's really agnostic there. As long as you have something that's able to parse some JSON and produce some JSON in output, you can use that for the business logic of your chatbots. All right, so about Dialog Flow, it's really this tool which allows you to create those conversational experiences and to communicate naturally with your users. So it's using natural language understanding to be able to parse sentences or voice, whether it's voice-based or text-based, that come from the users. So it's some advanced usage of machine learning, especially for understanding the language. And what's interesting there, as you shall see in the demo, you're going to focus on providing samples, examples of phrases, rather than trying to create some understanding yourself the sentence, the syntax, the grammar of a sentence, or use, let's say, regular expressions to figure out where are the variables in those sentences, etc. So it's really fairly easy to use, even for people who are not, machine learning experts, language experts, etc. So. Why some of the key differentiators I'd like to highlight. Dialog Flow is a pretty popular tool used by more than 300,000 developers worldwide from 150 countries, using 14 different languages. There's a little plus because there are also variants like British English, American English, or French, Canadian, etc. With Dialog Flow, you can really build your chatbot conversational experience faster, thanks to the samples that you're going to use, or the utterances that represent what your users are actually saying. There are also pre-built agents. So what is a pre-built agent? A pre-built agent is an existing piece of conversations. For example, if you're working for a pizza delivery company, there's a food delivery agent which already has various sentences like how ordering a pizza, delivering that pizza, etc. There's also small talk features, which is so it's like a special pre-built agent, but for common phrases like "hello, how are you," "thank you," etc. And as you shall see, we can build things pretty quickly. What's nice is that you don't have to be, as I said, an expert in machine learning or natural language understanding. That's the platform that learns automatically from the samples of sentences that your users might be saying. And also you have other things which are interesting, things like analytics or training. So for example, if a user says something that's not recognized, later on you can investigate and see, okay, this stuff wasn't recognized, but I think it maps to a certain intent, and then you can progressively improve the quality and the understanding of your chatbot with more possible queries. Also, what's nice is that if you use Dialog Flow, you write your chatbot once, basically, and you can deploy it on other platforms, whether it's a Twitter chatbot or Slack chatbot, etc. Plus the languages I mentioned. But I'll show you the integrations at the end. So now let's have a look at the Dialog Flow interface. So it's demo time. So I prepared a little dummy project, perhaps like this might be easier on the eye. So yeah, there's this little warning that API AI got renamed into Dialog Flow, which is a bit irritating. I click on it every day several times. So let's have a look at the interface. Here on the right, we're gonna use this the right side here where you can actually type some queries, as if that's the user typing. On the left, you have things like the list of intents, the list of entities, how you can train your chatbots with things that haven't been recognized, etc. And here, fulfillment will be useful. We also have the pre-built agents and small talk that I mentioned. So here I have a list of agents, of intents in the middle, and we're going to go through some or all of them depending on time. So let's see. So I use a little nomenclature, 0, 1, etc., so that they are ordered visually, so that I know which one I should show you first. So let's say a user is telling about the favorite color, his or her favorite color. So what you actually have to do is to enter some sample sentences that users might be saying. So people might be saying just the color right away, or say blue is my favorite color, or my favorite color is red, etc. So you can try to guess different examples of different ways of how people might be saying which color is their preferred one. So let's say I say my preferred color is one that wasn't used, yellow. Okay, and so I didn't have. So I had preferred color is, but I didn't have my preferred color. Or I could use, let's say, what kind of variant I could think of. White is my preferred color. That should work as well. White, yeah, I heard your favorite color is white. So each time, even if I didn't use the exact sentence that was in the samples, it actually managed to figure out that, oh, it's pretty close from the other sentences that are mentioned there. So that should be that intent that should be triggered. And again, you don't have to do, look at the grammar of the sentence, look at stop words or remove stop words and things like that. But it figures out that it maps, it's pretty much the same structure as all the samples which are here. And also, you noticed, let's say, another way to say that, or I prefer red. And when I enter a new query, a new kind of sentence, notice that automatically it recognizes, okay, there's some kind of parameter there. And it's actually going to point to a predefined entity, which is of type color, @sys, that's the system types, @sys.colors, and it recognizes that, okay, that must be the same variable that you have here. And here in this place, in this area, in this section, You can also see the various types that are pre-built. So let's say airport codes or units of weights, city names, date, time, etc. So color is right there, flight number, etc. And at the end, you'll see my own entities, which show up right at the bottom, and you can filter them, etc. You can change the parameter name. There's you can use this notation $favcolor, which is the name of my parameter, in the response. So when this intent is triggered, it's going to extract the value of that parameter, and it's going to reply, okay, I heard your favorite color is $favcolor, just points at the variable that was found here for the color. And I could also define different responses, like glad to know that favcolor is your favorite color. Okay, if I save that, and it's going to iterate over the various responses randomly, so that you don't always have the very same synthetic answer, but something that feels more lively, more like a human being, because human beings don't always reply with the very same sentence. So if I say preferred color is white, and yeah, this time it used the other variant. But if I tried it again, color is white, perhaps, yeah, it's back to the first one. So I don't know if it's random or round robin or something. Okay, so that's the first example. Second example. So I have two variables this time for the weather, the city, and the date. And let me see if I used, no, I think I used that later on. I'll show you default values as well later on. So what's the weather tomorrow in Paris? And it's going to figure out the different parameters. City equals Paris, and when, that's the date here. That it's automatically... yeah, actually I have different answers there, so perhaps I can ask the same question again to have a different answer. So it's sunny in Paris tomorrow. What I want to show you there is when you use variables in your response, you can use $when, which is the computed value. So when I say tomorrow, you're going to get the 2017-11, etc. But you can use .original in order to have the same word that the user actually said, rather than the numerical value of the date, which can be handy. Okay, no default value there as well. Okay, right. What else? Also, the weather. Yeah, for example, if I forgot to say the city, so let's say what's the weather like tomorrow, and it's actually going to also select the right response depending on which parameters are actually already filled. So you can provide different answers depending on the data that was provided by the user or not. Yeah, I made some changes, I don't care. Okay, so next I used two variables. One of my variable in the last example wasn't actually filled, but I can also use or mandate that some of the parameters are required. So here I want to book a hotel. So by default, I want to have a 3-star hotel. So I put a default value in this variable. But for the other ones, I really want to know the number of persons and the number of nights for the booking. So let's say I want to book what? Yeah, perhaps book me a hotel. Let's see. So it's going to say, okay, for how many persons? Okay, 3 persons. For how many nights? 2 nights. And then notice that, okay, I've got 2 nights, 3 persons, and by default, the default value, stars. What's interesting is that I actually defined prompts, which are ways to actually request doing some request for the required parameters of my instance. So if the user doesn't give the number of persons or the number of nights, automatically I'll get an additional question asked to the user to fill in the slots so that we have all the data that is needed to fulfill the request. So I can define one prompt or many prompts for the missing parameters. And the default values, so this one had a default value of 3 for the 3 stars. I want 3-star hotels. One last little comment about that one is it's actually a bit tricky because the 3 parameters are just numbers, but it probably figures out that, so I just say book me a hotel, but let me say something else, book a hotel for 3 nights, 1 person, yeah, something like this. Let's see. It didn't work for the number of persons. That's interesting. I don't think it matters the number if we say, yeah. So perhaps it thought that 1 wasn't a number, but was rather, part of the sentence, but not part of the number. So sometimes it's tricky to get that right on chatbot platforms, so that it properly recognizes that this 3 number is related to the number of nights, and this 2 is related to the number of persons. All right. Let's say I want to do some recipes. What do I want to show you in that one? Yeah. So here, instead of using the types, the default types of entities, I actually created a food entity. And in my food entity, I listed the various ingredients that are allowed. Tomato, cheese, ham, pasta, salad, potato. So if I come back here, recipe ingredients. So let's cook tomato. Tomato. Okay, it replies cooking. And regardless of whether I type tomato or tomatoes, if I use the plural or singular form, it really recognizes that, that's really the same kind of food. So you don't have to define all the variants of a single word, plural, singular, etc. Yes, I think that's all for that one. 5. Okay, so when you define entities, you can also, so the clothes are here, you can define synonyms. So when you speak about, let's say, a shirt, you might be saying long sleeve shirt, etc. Or for a jumper, it could be jumper, cardigan, sweater, etc. But you want to just kind of get the category of those things. So if you go back here, the clothes, so what, let's say, cardigan should I wear? And it's going to reply, nothing, no jumper, go naked. And in parentheses, I put the original value. So the original value, .original, that's cardigan, but the variable that I got, the value that I got for the cloth variable was actually cardigan. So I'm able to get just the main representative of the category or the actual value that the user sent. So that can be handy. The other type of custom entities that you can do, it's so I'm going to watch some movie or series, and I have instance entities. So I have a movie entity with Blade Runner that we're going to watch on Thursday. I also have a series here, and the user wants to watch either a movie or a series. So I could create 2 distinct instances and repeat the same kind of sentences for both, or I can define a kind of enum movie or series, which is actually a list of the other entities that are allowed. So it's kind of the union of both movie and series. So when I say movie series, if I say something like I need to put the cursor there, I want to watch Orange is the New Black. Okay, let's watch Orange is the New Black. Let's wanna look at Blade Runner. Okay, and let's watch Blade Runner, and you get the value there. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So that's an enum type, being the union of other entities. 6, 7. Oh yeah, this one is interesting. So you can make your own entities. Yes, you can create enums which gather different entities together, but you can also create some kind of composite entity. So here, my robot can move 79 steps backward, something like this. Okay, let's move 59 steps backwards, and I'm going to show you that 10 steps right, which is here. It's of type move, my own entity, and if I show you the entity, it's here. I can define small sentences, basically, like it contains a number, steps, and a direction. So the number is the default system types, and I also have a direction type here, direction, forward, backward, left, or right. And I can also use synonyms, move ahead, move back, etc. So it's a nice way to describe your own kind of units, like number of steps and such. So it's pretty advanced. Fast food, what I have here. Fast food, yeah, so I want to, you can create a list. So one variable can hold a list of values. So for example, I want to I'd like to eat cheese, burger, and Coke. And I'm going to get, a list of fast food, cheeseburger, and Coke. I don't know why I have, I don't know why I've put some color. I guess that was for the default value, something like this. And here, and notice that this is the output that you see here. And notice that it also asks a question because I'm using a follow-up intent, which is, okay, you replied this, now I want to go on with the conversation, and I want to say yes or no, I want, yes with fries. And then it's going to say, okay, let's add fries. So I went through the yes case. Let's add fries on top of cheeseburger and Coke, because inside the, so I should show you the follow-up intent. So this is this one, yes. And the answer is here. So let's add fries, because I went through the yes branch with, and notice the syntax is a little bit different. Instead of the usual dollar syntax, it's the hash sign, because we used contexts to carry some data between the follow-up, the original and follow-up intent. So the fast food CTX context actually contains some data from the previous request response. And in the previous request response, we define, okay, cheeseburger and Coke. So I'm going to add fries on top of that. So I'm able to reference the previous query and also have, I don't have any variable in that one, but we are in the yes branch, so I know that we also have fries. Something I wanted to mention is that you can also see the kind of JSON content which is exchanged between, for example, if you use an API, a REST call, or something like this, to see what's exchanged between Dialog Flow and the integration mechanism that you've chosen. And you're not seeing here for the context, but you'd be able to also see information about context. Okay, 8, what time? I think I'm getting over time. Yeah, one last thing perhaps I can show you. this one with a little bit of sound, and I added the integration of custom responses. So here I use a format called SSML for adding some audio, etc. So let's say let's do some squats, or I can use the actions on Google Console. Might be more fun to see the results. So talk to my Dialog Flow deep dive, and then let's see if you're gonna hear that. Let's do some squats. Okay, taking a bit of time. So I'm not hearing it. There should be some sound. Hey, no. Well, so normally you should see, you should hear, or perhaps I can play it like this. No, it's not gonna. Oh, I'm gonna remove it if I do it. So I did some. Yeah, never mind. It's. I think we might be hearing it a little bit. No.
Congratulations.
Oops, sorry. Well, there was some sound. So well, I don't think I need it anymore. All right. So, well, there are other things I wanted to show you. Things like hotel reservation, where you can have some custom responses for example, if you use the I need to get back into the conversation. If you want to have some richer,
let's get the test for
some richer output. For example, if you want to see things like cards, carousels, my shopping list, or chips, that's the little buttons that you see. So this one is going to be a little, a list of things. So when you use the Google Assistant on your phone, you're able to see what's in there visually. No need to save. Okay, I forgot the functions, but it's really just showing the fulfillment. Like when I say what time is it, it's gonna call what time is it. So it's a GMT time, I think, but it's I can calculate that more correctly. There's a built-in cloud functions for Firebase integration within Dialog Flow. So if you want to do some computation, fetching some data, etc. So this is where I entered the code. But you can also use define a remote URL. Like, well, I don't want to change it right now. Define a remote URL as well. Okay. So just a few closing thoughts. You can train your agent for sentences that haven't been recognized, so that you can match and recognize sentences to existing intents from your chatbot. There's small talk for the small interactions like, okay, how are you? You're so sweet, or hello, goodbye. Pre-built agents, there are many pre-built agents for things like food delivery, currency conversion, flights, weather, hotel booking, etc. that you can use. You just fork the conversation and integrate that and customize that in your own chatbot. These are the various integration mechanisms that are available. So you can plug the Google Assistant, you can create a Slack chatbot and customize for the Slack special UI widgets, Skype, Twitter, etc. If you're unhappy with the existing integration mechanisms, you can also use SDKs for things like, okay, if you want to integrate a chatbot in a Unity game, you can do that, or from different languages, from a server application, etc., or even from a JavaScript client on the browser side. We also have a new tool that is being worked on in beta, which is a chat-based, which is called Chatbase for advanced analytics, and this is pretty interesting for things like showing the things like where you actually lost your users along the conversations. All right, some references. We've got some nice documentation on this website, on the Google website, if you want to learn more about how human conversations actually work. I have a buff tomorrow night with my friend Wasim about how we actually tried to build a chatbot for the Devoxx conference. And that's about it. So thanks a lot for your attention, and I think I'm out of time for questions. So unless there's one question, perhaps. And there's a mic over there if you want to ask any question. All right. So, yeah, one question.
What about using another language?
What about using another language? So let's say I speak French. I want to add French on top of that. So there's a little, very quickly. There's here you noticed a little chip with so I'm going to show it with this. Here there's a EN for English, but you can also add other languages here. We can also that's about it. And then you're gonna have to write the same sentences in French in other languages. Okay, thank you everyone.
Okay, thank you. That was interesting stuff. So next up is myself. So I'll be talking about how you can build chatbots using the Microsoft platform. So my name is Nick Troch. I'm a software engineer at Microsoft. And so what are we going to cover in these like 35 minutes? So first we're going to look at how can we create a frequently asked questions bot in under 2 minutes. So putting some stress here. After lunch, always difficult. And then we're going to go into, well, we've kind of converted our frequently asked questions into a frequently asked questions bot. So how can we now create a more custom weather bot to advance it? So we know what the weather is due to our frequently asked questions. Now we want to get the weather information. So we're going to do this in custom code. And then in the next step, we're going to add some more intelligence to our weather bot. So we want our bot kind of adding on top of what I have said before, make it more intelligent, understanding natural language, so doing natural language processing. And then finally, we're going to wrap, kind of put all the things together to get this amazing bot, which you'll be awed about once we finish this session. Now, let's start. What is kind of the problem when you're creating bots? Specifically, kind of for the last year or so, I've been talking to a lot of companies, a lot of developers that want to create chatbots, and kind of the key message is that, well, we have already this extensive set of frequently asked questions that people are still calling our data center or our call centers to ask the same questions that we already answered in our frequently asked questions document. Nobody seems to be able to find it, and that goes both internally as externally to consumers. And so wouldn't it be nice if we could kind of convert that existing kind of knowledge base, that frequently asked question set, into a chatbot, where we can reach the users where they are using their messaging applications, but still leverage that information that already has been written. We don't want to rewrite all of that stuff or start copy-pasting the information in some new format to be able to expose it through a chatbot. And so, yes, we have chatbot platforms, and on the other hand, we have these knowledge bases. How can we bring them together? How can we build kind of this frequently asked questions bot? And so what we did is, it's kind of an internal project, what we call a garage project, kind of worked on that specific thing, and they came up with the Q&A maker, which is basically an easy way to convert an existing frequently asked question set, and that could be in a Word document, could be a PDF document, could be a website containing questions and answers kind of sequences. And take this and expose it as a chatbot. And so make sure that not just literally copy the questions as is, and that the user needs to ask those questions as is, but that you can also use natural language processing, so that you, as a user, you can use variations of those questions and still get the proper answers. And this is what we're trying to achieve with this Q&A maker technology. And so it's offered as a cognitive services, one of our AI services. So let's already go into a demo. And let's try to do this in under 2 minutes. So putting no pressure. So what you see here is basically the website from the CDC, the Center of Disease Control in the US. And they have here an existing frequently asked questions site up about winter weather. Winter is coming, so we want to get some information. We want to be prepared for winter. Typical questions that you might have is, what is hypothermia? Always good to know that you'd better dress up, wear your Devoxx t-shirt when you're going out, that you're really nice and warm. And so we can click on this. So this is structured it's just a web page. You can format it as you like. It's not really extremely structured. It's kind of semi-structured. So we're going to take this information. And so in the next step, what we're going to do is, I'm going to zoom in first. We're going to go to the Q&A maker service. So you just go to qnamaker.ai, and there we can create a new service, a new Q&A service. And so we need to give it a name. Let's call it the weather FAQ. And then the next step we need to do is we need to provide a URL. So this is going to be the URL where we can find our frequently asked questions. So let's copy, paste this. By the way, for those people wondering, this also works in Chrome. So I'm just pasting here my URL. If you don't have a URL, you can just upload a document, or you can even start from scratch and write your question and answer pairs as you go. Or you can use a combination of both, of course. And so now we're generating this frequently asked questions bot. And so here you can see already our questions that have been crawled from that specific website. So we have what is hypothermia, what's the risk, some warning signs, etc., etc. And we get the corresponding answers here. And so now we can go and start testing this. And so we go to the test tab here, and we can start asking what is hypothermia. Okay. So we have our chatbot, and yes, lo and behold, we know what hypothermia is, so we can prepare properly not to get it. And so you can go and you can ask different questions. We can start adding alternative questions here. If you know that people might ask the same question in a different way, you can just add already proactively some alternative questions for this. So this is kind of the basis. So in just a few minutes, the only thing we need to do here is then publish, and you'll get a endpoint that you can then leverage for asking your questions, and you'll get the corresponding answers. There you go. Just an HTTP REST endpoint, which will, later in the session, we'll see how we can actually integrate it in a fully functioning chatbot. Okay. So this is really kind of the easy road to creating your chatbot, but it really corresponds to or answers a lot of the basic questions that organizations or developers already have. Yeah. How can I take my existing code, or how can I take just a database of questions and answers and expose that as a chatbot? Okay. Did I manage in 2 minutes? Yes. 3 minutes? Ah, darn. It's probably switching back and forth. Should not have mentioned Chrome. Maybe that would have gotten me under the 2 minutes. So now let's take the next step. It's good to have our question and answers there, but we want some custom logic there. If you want to know the weather, it's pretty hard to create a Q&A combination for every single location, every single temperature, and put that in a Q&A bot. Yeah. So we want some custom logic in there. So for this, we've built kind of over a year and a half ago the bot framework. Bot framework, and we've heard it before. You write basically single time your chatbot implementation, And then you can publish it across a multitude of channels. And there's a whole range of channels, ranging from Skype and Messenger. And as well, you have a REST API. So if you want to have kind of a chat interface in existing mobile application, maybe on a website, where you don't necessarily want to integrate in, for example, in Messenger or Skype, well, you can do so as well. So you get REST, you get a web chat control that you can just plug and put it in your website or in your mobile app. And so what we get on top of that is the approach that we've taken with the Microsoft Bot Framework is really a code-first approach. So very often when you're building chat interfaces, it's good to have a visual designer, but very often, very quickly, you get into, well, custom code. You need to integrate in existing systems. You need to do some custom logic, which is really hard to put into a visual designer for all of the cases. And so we've taken a code-first approach. However, if writing code, of course, comes with there's source control integration. You need to have continuous integration. Maybe you want to have local debugging support. You need to run your chatbot locally. Those kind of things. How can you get a rich developer experience while writing these chatbots? So this is really something that we wanted to help you with in using the Microsoft Bot Framework. And so this is what we're going to look at. So what is a chatbot in essence? It's pretty basic. A chatbot is basically just a REST API. It's just a REST endpoint that contains the implementation for your chatbot. Of course, you're going to integrate with this Microsoft Bot Framework because you want to tie it to these messaging channels. So that's all the stuff that's the Bot Framework going to do. You need to handle state management. You need to deal with context across different messages. You'll have to integrate with these intelligent services to do natural language processing, those kind of things. But in essence, a chatbot is just a REST endpoint. And this is what we're going to see here. So another demo. Did I mention it's going to be a demo-heavy session? Okay. So what I've done before is I have already created on Azure a Azure Bot Service. So what is the Azure Bot Service? It's basically just a, well, bot backend as a service. Whatever, everything can be put as a service. But it's basically just how can we quickly get some hosting location for our chatbot, for our REST API. And so that's why we created the Azure Bot Service. It's going to give you all of those capabilities for tying into these channels, for giving you some publicly available endpoint, for adding some analytics, doing the continuous integration. All of those things come basically for free. It takes a minute, but as I only have 30 minutes, I've kind of skipped that one and I've already created one. So here you can see our Azure Bot Service. You have the build section, and so we can actually write our chatbot in the browser. So if you want to do browser-based development of chatbots, you can. Note that it may be somewhat dangerous to start writing and modifying chatbots in production, modifying them on the fly. Technically, yes, you can. Should you do it? Probably not. So you may want to do some continuous integration. But here you can actually see the implementation of a chatbot, and it's fairly simple, as you can see here. We're setting up. Here is the example written in Node.js. So we're using Restify to expose our chatbot as a REST endpoint. So using Restify and create a server. We've got some properties to set to connect it to the bot framework. And then finally, here at the bottom, you can actually see the implementation of our bot, which is pretty much an echo bot. Yeah, we're just sending the session. You said whatever you had entered in the chat window. So very basic bot. Now, I said we're going to do continuous integration. So I'm just going to quickly copy and paste some stuff. So how do we set up? Let's do paste in here. So this will just set up a GitHub, a Git repo on our backend. So in Azure, there we have it. So we have a URL now that we can just copy and which will clone. So straight from there, we're going to do a git clone of that specific URL. There we go. That will probably ask me for a password. There we go. And now we go to my weather and let's take a quick look what it looks like. Okay, let's look at the app.js. And it should look pretty familiar to what we saw in the browser. It's exactly the same file, but now it's continuous integration. So we have, we can now just push to our remote and it will end up on our backend running in Azure. And so here we could see we have our Echo bot. How can we run this locally? So we have built a emulator, a cross-platform emulator, so which you can see here. Has a chat window. You can get some detail about messages. We can put our endpoint there. So let's now quickly run Chatbot. We'll need to do an npm install because we need our packages. So in terms of getting started with the bot framework, what do you need? Well, you'll need some way of exposing your REST endpoint. So for this, in this specific case, we're using Restify, but you can use your flavor of choice. And you need the bot builder npm package. That's the only thing. That contains all of the packages, all of the libraries that you need for connecting to the Microsoft bot framework. So while that one is going on, what we'll do then, we'll connect from the emulator and have our local developer experience. So you can test basically everything locally. You can actually set up debugging, set your breakpoints, inspect messages, do whatever you like for local development. Either on Windows machine, on a Mac, on a Linux. So we support pretty much every platform to do so. And looks like this one is taking some time. So what I'll do in the meantime, let's make our bot a little bit more advanced already. And I'll add another terminal alongside here. And I'm going to copy a prep file. App one. There we go. Oh, this cat is coming. Okay. So what we've done here, and I think our npm install should now be completed. Yes, it has. So in the meantime, we can start our bot. And so what we're going to do is just use nodemon app.js, get it running. So if you have some experience with Node, this should all look familiar. You can just do node or nodemon. And it seems there's still something missing. Oops. Yes, I'm already missing my weatherlib file. That's what you get when you're fast forwarding. And so for our weather bot, I have already written the code. My weatherlib. There we go. Nodemon. Switching back to my other terminal. Sorry for that one. There we go. So our Restify server is listening on port 3978, which you can now go to here and connect. We say connect, and then we can start saying hi to our bot. And asking us what location are you looking the weather for? Let's take maybe Brussels. And so what we get here is already some information. So we have connected to an API from it's API XU. It's a free weather API endpoint. And here we get a carousel of weather information back. So all running locally here, just connecting out to a remote API service. Okay. Yeah, so we got these rich cards support. We have text support. And basically what we do is you write your bot once and we publish it across multiple channels. Depending on the channel's capabilities, we'll modify the actual layout of the result. So you can imagine if you create a bot which is accessible through SMS messages, these cards don't go well with SMS messages. Yeah, so we're converting the information into something that is readable and is acceptable on the specific channel that you're using, that you're publishing your bot on. But still, you write it only once. Okay. So what have we done here? So basically, we've written like two functions. We're asking for the location, and then next step is just based on that location, we're going to retrieve the weather information, create what we call a thumbnail card, which is these little rich cards that you saw. We have receipts cards. There's different types of cards available for you. And then we're just returning this message to the user. So it's pretty straightforward Node.js code. And you can do pretty much whatever you like in there. It's Node.js. It's a service. Just write in there whatever you like. If you want to integrate with a backend system, you can do so. So this is pretty straightforward. Now, but it's still pretty dumb, right? Each time we need to, it's single purpose. There's no real intent recognition. So it always asks us which location and then returns. We want to make this more intelligent. And so for this, similar to what you saw in the previous session, I'm not going to dive too deeply in it, is we have a service which is called LUIS, L-U-I-S. We always say LUIS because the actual name is Language Understanding Intelligence Service, which kind of, I have to say it many times, my session has ended before I've gone into the content. And so this LUIS service is basically our natural language processing service. And it's pretty much the same capabilities that you saw before, where you define intents. So we got to get a weather forecast. We have our entities that we can specify, whether it's built-in entities about time and location. You can create your own custom entities. Defining an intent goes by creating sample sentences, and then we'll generate possible variations for it. So here you can actually see some of those sample sentences or utterances. And if we switch it to tokens or entities, we are able to then also test and train our system, and then eventually we'll publish this kind of natural language processing service again as a REST endpoint, which we can then integrate in our. Lewis is not responding. Let me switch to Chrome here. There we go. I already had it pre-baked. Probably Wi-Fi. And so you publish your endpoint as a REST service, which you can see here. So you get this endpoint. And now this information, this endpoint, is what we're going to need to tie this to our chatbot. So the approach we've taken, again, with the bot framework is just plug in any recognizer that you like. So why not use Dialog Flow as your intent recognizer and plug it into Microsoft Bot Framework? Can be done. Should be pretty easy. It's open source, so if you feel free, just go ahead and write this plugin, or otherwise we'll probably write it ourselves. And so what we'll do is I'm just going to add this NLP in there. That's going to be app2 as app.js. There we go. Lo and behold, everything changes. And so in our chatbot, what do we change if we want to have this NLP in there? Well, we're going to add the link to our model. We're going to add it as a recognizer. So here we have a LUIS recognizer. Potentially you'll have a Dialog Flow recognizer. And then we define basically our dialogues. So we get one for the weather forecast. It's the same logic that we had before. And one thing we need to specify is a trigger action. How can we trigger an intent? So you can trigger it using a regular expression. You can trigger it using an intent coming from LUIS, which is what we're doing here. So our get weather forecast is basically the name of our intent. We can add a greeting intent. You can add any number of intents you like. And so if we run this, and it is already running, what we can then say is what is, or let's say, is it called in Oslo? Let's see. And then we get the weather specifically for Oslo. Yeah, because We recognize the intent of the user. Is it cold? So you want to get weather forecasts. And also we are retrieving the entity from that specific sentence. You already have asked for Oslo. Okay. Now, to pretty much come to the end here, I'm going to put a number of things together now. So initially we created our Q&A bot to ask about information about weather. We added some natural language processing to really get weather information for a specific location. So we add some endpoints in there. What if we put this together? Yeah, can these both work in one single bot? Because Q&A is just another intent. So let's see how we do this. Due to the magic of copying. We'll see what we have changed here. I'm going to zoom in here. So we have our natural language processing recognizer. It's still there. That continues to work. But what we're adding here on top is our Q&A recognizer. So we're adding a Q&A maker recognizer, which takes a key and a knowledge base ID. So for the duration of this session, you can still play with it and copy this stuff. I will change it afterwards as this session is being recorded. And then I'm adding this recognizer, this Q&A recognizer to my bot. Okay. So this is kind of the setup that we're doing. Tie it to the Q&A maker, our chatbot. And then the next step we need to do is we need to define here another dialog, a Q&A dialog, which will just listen to a Q&A match, which is what comes back from our Q&A recognizer as soon as it recognizes something which is not triggered by Lewis, because we're using kind of a tiered approach. First we try Lewis. If it doesn't get a match there, we're going to pass it on to the Q&A recognizer. If it doesn't get anything there, we're going to use kind of a default answer. And so Q&A comes back as a match for our Q&A maker. Yeah. Now we've copied this, and one thing I should do is change my package.json, because actually it's using a specific extension of the bot builder. And so here, bot builder cognitive services. You can see IntelliSense for package.json files in Visual Studio Code. Just humble brag. npm install. Okay, should be installing this specific extension. So this allows us to kind of integrate with the Q&A maker. Should not take too long. There we go. It's up and running. Let's quickly check that everything's good here. Yes. And so now if we go back to our emulator, so we had, so yes, we can ask for the weather. We had some questions there in the Q&A. So there was hypothermia. We could also ask for what is frostbite. I'm not referring to the game engine, but actually the definition for frostbite is an injury to the body, whatever, wherever. This comes from our Q&A maker bot. Okay, nice. So we're combining natural language processing, frequently asked questions bot. Now I've talked about continuous integration. Let's now push this, because all of this is running locally, push this to our production environment. So here we have, let's put a commit message there, final version, add everything in there. We're going to commit locally. So we have our local commits, and then we push it to our environment running in Azure. So we're now pushing it to Dublin. So let's hope we don't have too many headwind. It's now pushing that stuff all the way there. And once it's up on our target environment, we can go back to our weather service. Let me close this here for a second. So here on the right-hand side, you can see our test interface. So I could say hi. It Should probably say that it doesn't recognize hi. Still pushing, I guess. In the meantime, any questions so far? If you would ask the question about languages, yes, we support multiple languages as well. Just so. Okay, hi, it says hello. That hello information was actually information coming out of our Q&A bot. Because the initial one, if you create a Q&A maker bot, the first intent or the first answer that it puts in there, or Q&A answer, is hi, and it answers hello. So we could ask for what is frostbite. And we get our answer. Like, is it cold in Brussels? That one should be triggered by Lewis. Lewis coming back to our Node.js code, which will return these rich cards. Yeah. Now, just to really show off, I'm going to add another channel. That will be the final part of my session. I'm going to show off with Cortana. Who's using Cortana? Okay. You will be using it now by proxy. So feel energized. Okay, so my weatherbot service, I need to have Devoxx weather. So when coming home, you will be able to say, I have used Cortana by proxy. So I'm now saving this information. So adding a new channel to my chatbot, and then what happens is it saves it, it configures it in Cortana. Based on my Microsoft account, it is now available on my machine here. And let's say, what did I call it? Ask my weather service. My weather bot. I should have taken a shorter name. Is it called in Oslo? Using Oslo because it's a short city name. Now, can I have permission? Of course you can. You are my friend. It's getting connected. And the weather for Oslo, Norway is partly cloudy. There you go, and we can scroll through the thumbnail cards. With that, I want to thank you for your attention and hand it over to the next speaker. Any questions? Yes. Yes, I will. Yeah, I'll post it. Yes. Okay. Did you get my name? Yeah. Otherwise, my Twitter account. It's in the speaker profile. I'll just send it out so the whole setup is available for you to reuse. Yes. Other questions? I guess we have a break right now, so feel free to shoot your questions. You have time. Yes. Okay. Thanks once again, and enjoy the conference.
Lovely. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you guys are still awake. If not, I will throw things at you so you won't go to sleep. I have been known to do that. Just kidding. All right, so I'm Tara Walker. I'm from AWS, and we're going to talk about how you integrate chatbots with Amazon Lex. So I'm going to introduce Lex to you, and we're going to do hopefully some cool things and build a few bots and see how it goes. And hopefully you'll want to play with it with me. All right, with that, Amazon Lex. So Amazon Lex is you've seen so many chatbots so far. So it is our conversational AI interface for you to build chatbots. It has a few things that's already integrated into it. One is voice recognition. So if you want to add voice to your bot, once you create your bot, we've already done the plumbing for you. So that's one thing that Lex already features. It also has natural language understanding. So not only does it understand what you're saying, both in text and in voice, and can translate that back and forth to your bot, but while you're getting people to talk back and forth to your bot, it's actually training your bot as well as the back end. And then it's using the same deep learning technology for those of you guys are familiar with the little tool called Alexa. And what's cool about this, some of the things that we've done here lately is that if you build a Lex bot, I can quickly export some JSON and automatically have an Alexa skill. So we'll show you how to do some things like that. The final thing I'll say is a fully managed service. So you really don't have to do a lot of heavy lifting to get Alexa started and get your chatbot started, as I hopefully will have time to show you how I can quickly turn a bot I created into a web bot that's actually running with CI/CD. Or take the same bot and go through Mobile Hub and have a mobile application running, hopefully by the time I'm still up on this stage. So let's go through a few little things. We're going to skip some of this because I want to get to the code. The main thing I want you to know, if you can see that, I actually used the Devoxx presentation thing, and no one else did, and now I feel guilty. I could have used my beautiful organized slides, but okay, here we go. As you've seen with the other ones, we have intents. You probably have heard this now 3 times. We're no different in that regard. We're going to use intent to tell how you want your chatbot to respond once it receives input from the user. And this is both from text as well as from audio. Then we have this concept that's called utterances. This is very similar to if you built Alexa skills. It's the same thing in Lex. Utterances allow you then to say, okay, this is a spoken thing they're going to say. I want to take that utterance and use it for something. So we're going to build a coffee bot. So I want to know, what's the beverage type? Do you want it to be cold or ice, hot or iced, that kind of thing. So it's a phrase that you want for the user to communicate back and forth with your bot. And how we communicate once we get that utterance down is called a slot. So if I want to know the beverage size after they've created their utterance, I'm going to create a slot for beverage size. So every time they say something that's related to that slot, I can capture the size and do some cool things with it. And then finally, we have fulfillment. So because Lex has the ability to both do voice and do text automatically, you can determine how you want to fulfill this. Do you want the fulfillment to continue on with voice? Very simple. You just let Lex do its thing and it will return that verbiage back to the user. If you want it actually with text, you actually say, hey, do not return voice, even though they've been talking back in voice. I want this to be returned back in text. And again, we support both naturally unless you decide to turn it off. You are at the helm and when it comes to this. How you fulfill your bot, you can either allow Lex to do it, so you can do it within the concepts of the bot without writing any code. You can let it just kind of, this is the fulfillment message, this is how I want to go. I can really do some things there that I don't really have to fulfill it with any other code. However, if you want to really get granular with it and make it do some really cool things, you can use Lambda. Now, Lambda automatically integrates with Lex, so it'll automatically do the permissions for you. You'll see this in a minute. As well as, since I have then this integration with Lambda, not only can I kick off other REST APIs, I can kick off other AWS services, I can kick off other bots in Facebook, in Twitter, if I want to do something with Twilio. All of those things are already ready for you and prepared. So we support all of the bot messaging. But again, if you really want to get granular with what you want to do, you use Lambda. Now, hopefully you have time, because I was thinking about, we're doing a bot, but I didn't, it was like, so 5 hours ago, I was like, oh, why don't I make a bot for the conference? Yeah, duh, you probably should have thought of that earlier. But I actually finished it, believe it or not, and that's how quick we can do it. Now, mind you, I probably don't have all the sessions in because I was a little lazy, but we're going to show you how quickly you can do that. And again, all this code I'll post on GitHub so you can play with it as much as you want. The concept of the workflow, what you're going to find with Lex, and this is probably going to be my last slide because I hate reading off slides, I'd rather get to the code, is once you create your bot and build it in Lex, you test it, you're going to save it. And you can save it automatically with versioning. So you have versioning built into Lex. and I can alias that version. So this is the version that works for X, Y, and Z. This is the version I want maybe for the web. Maybe I want a different version for the mobile. And all you have to do is change the alias that's required for that versus changing a bunch of code. And I literally can publish in different platforms with different nuances. Of course, then I can publish with different platforms with the same bot as well. But again, we have a concept of versioning that's already built in. So you build your bot, it creates these versions, you can test, and then you hit publish with that alias. And then again, you can go back and test other things. So this is kind of the version support, which is kind of an eye chart. So I'm going to skip this. And then Lex enables a full solution. So you can do dialogue management. I want sometimes for you to say X, Y, and Z, but other times if they said this type of message, I want to change that completely. So you can dynamically change your dialogue management. You can deploy with one click. We're going to actually show that. You can create a CI/CD pipeline for your bot just simply by doing a few clicks and you're off to the races. We're actually going to say that as well. And as I noticed, text-to-speech is integrated. And how is that integrated? You've probably heard about a thing called Poly. If you haven't, if you would bear with me and go to the blog, I've written a bunch of code about Poly and how you can actually have different speech coming from Poly. And what that means is then you can also use speech marks, SSML, and things of that nature when you're having your bot communicate. So your bot doesn't just have to spit things back out. It can actually have expression when it does it. So, you know, if you were doing something about, oh my God, you had this, which I did, this injury where you almost cut off your finger the other day. What do you do to stop the bleeding? You know, you can have your bot come back to you and be like, oh, stupid, you do X. So again, that's kind of the message I probably felt I needed to have back for myself after I almost cut off my finger. But anyway, we have business logic, we have analytics. All of this is baked in. It's like Prego, it's in there. And then we have security. So it encrypts the data in transit as well as rest. So you can feel confident that your bot is secure. All right, so I'm going to get out of the slides. We're going to do a quick demo, and I'll talk about Alexa in a minute. Let's go into AWS Lex. So I'm in Lex right now. You see I have a bunch of different bots, and you'll see that I actually created a couple of them just because I wanted to do something different on my way here. So let's do a really simple bot. Like you've never done a bot before. You have no clue what this bot thing is. This whole AI thing, yeah, you all are really geeking out on it, but I don't know what it is. But I want to do a bot. I can simply hit create, and already we have samples baked in for you. Now, what's great about some of these samples is not only are the samples baked in, but it also has the fulfillment code in Lambda baked in it as well. You can say, I want to do something like try a sample of order flowers or book a trip or schedule an appointment. So let's do, I'll just do what everyone always does. We'll do the order flowers first, and then I'll show you how easy it is to do it. So I'll just say order flowers Devoxx because that's where I am. And it's going to automatically provision the appropriate IAM role, that's our security role, for how you can address or execute this bot. Now, we also have a provision because we have a lot of people doing bots for different reasons, and some of them are doing it for kids. So because we're trying to make sure we're doing the right thing, we actually ask you to indicate whether or not your bot will be used for children, because there is a privacy for children, and we want to be respectful of that. So I am not building the bot for any kids. I think we're all over 18. So if not, forgive me. We're going to go forward with that anyway. So if you want to do something for kids, just make sure you check that box. It'll ask you a few more questions. It's just trying to make sure you're doing the right thing. So at this point, I'm using a sample bot. It is going to automatically build my bot. My bot will be functional once it finishes. So while it's building that bot, let me talk about what you can do with the bots, because this is awfully slow and it's typically not, but hey, I'm up on stage, so why wouldn't it be slow? So let's talk about what I can do from a fulfillment perspective with this bot while it's thinking about being created. So one of the things you can do, I talked about, is with Lambda. So Lambda is our serverless functions, came out, this is 2017, so about 3 years ago, almost 4 now. And while that is building, I can actually build something to hook into this bot. So you'll see that when you play with this bot, and if you go to Lambda, if I say create function, I can type on from a keyword to say Lex. And then it can give me things like, oh, you want to use the book trip sample. So you might want to do something different than that. Of course, we support multiple languages. So we support Python, we support Node.js, we support C#, we support Java, we support pretty much all the languages. So if I wanted to do this, just because I'll do it in Node just to show you, I can call this, the order flowers, I don't know, hook and Devoxx, because I can't think of anything else. I can choose an existing role. Again, remember, security for AWS is always going to be paramount. So anything you do, we're going to ask you for permission first. So we're a least privileged type of company. So you have to determine what you want to do. I can create a new role from a template. So if I want to do this and use this as a microservice, there's actually a role that's for microservices. If I want to create a custom role, I can click that and it will go out and say, okay, she wants a custom role. Let me start creating something for her for a custom role for this. And then it'll come back and do that as well. So while that's thinking, let's go back. See, it's already saying, oh, you want a execution role. This is what you probably need. So I can hit allow and go forward with that. It is successful. And now I have a role created for it. Now, here is the code. It's already written for me because, like I said, we have a bunch of samples where we've already written the code for you so you can get accustomed to how to build a bot. Now, before I get into that, let's see if it's, great, it's finished. So now this is my bot. It's for our order flowers. It's completely finished. And to prove it, I can actually talk to the bot and do anything with it. Now, I can do this right in this browser, but I will also show you how easy it is to immediately take this as it's finished and put it into a web page or either into a mobile app. So I want to talk to my bot and I say, okay, I want to, actually I'm going to add one and says order flowers just because that seems really long to type all the rest of that stuff. So I'm going to add order flowers. I'm going to hit build because I wanted to make a change there. And then I'm going to be able to talk order flowers. And this is because I'm too lazy to actually type out the rest of this stuff. Forgive me. Yes, I have a broken finger. We're going to go with that. Usually I type a lot faster, but since I don't, I am slow. All right, so that's building. Let me go back to the order flowers, what you can do to make it even more granular. So we've created this for you. You'll see that it has an illicit slot. This will make a lot more sense once that finished building. Here's a close for fulfillment. Let me see, why is that all gray? Probably because I didn't hit create function. That could be why. Talking faster than my hands are moving. All right, now I have a Lambda function that can actually fill this. I'm going to explain these slots for a minute, but when I go back, this will totally make more sense. So if this seems a little crazy right now, this illicit slot, this delegate, this close, what is she talking about? Bear with me. It's going to all come together, I promise. So illicit slot, I have this function already written for me. I have a close because I want to fulfill my bot. And I have a delegate function. These are helper functions that you can literally cut and paste and use in any Lambda function if you want to type for your Lex bot. These other functions are specific for the order flowers. So I want to parse the local date, so the time zone that's appropriate for where I am, and not, I actually did a good job and changed my laptop to be on European time versus in US time. That was a little interesting as I was doing things. So the rest of these functions are specifically about the order flowers. I want to validate the flowers because I can do this in the function as well as in Lex. I want to determine what the source of Lex is coming back. So there's this concept called dialog code hook, as well as a fulfillment code hook. And then I can dispatch that request based upon which one it is. So right now that all is like, yeah, that's great. I have no clue what you're talking about. So let's actually put it in practice so those things make sense. So now I have this bot. It's finished creating. You'll see that at this point, I have no Lambda validation on initialization at all. I'm going to do this completely as it is. I can have a confirmation prompt that when I'm finished, it say, okay, your flower type will be ready. Remember, this is a sample, so it did all this for me. It was real nice. And then I have fulfillment. And at this point, fulfillment, I want anything that happens to return back to the client. At this point, the client is the browser and the console, but your client could be anything. All right, so let's see how this goes. I'm going to say order flower, and I put flowers. And I just started it, so it hasn't learned yet. But what's great about that is in your back end, you'll see it says, okay, you asked for order flowers. I believe you wanted order flowers. And that'll be something when I do it the next time, it'll actually learn from that. So that's a good thing. So you'll see that I typed in the right thing. And it says, let me see if I can get a little bit more real estate here. Let's drop it just a little. All right. What type of flowers you'd like to order? That's the next thing. Now, here's what that illicit slot means. It says, okay, I want to order flowers. What type of flowers would you like to order? Now, this slot that I want to store the type of flowers in is not filled in as of yet. And to make sure I know what I want, if I said I want to pick up some flowers, I know that flower type is required, the pickup date is required, and the pickup time is required. Why do I know that? Because I actually, when I created these slots, said these should be required. Now, the pickup date is using a normal Amazon date. So it'll do all the heavy lifting when it comes to dates for you, which is great. So if I say Monday, it'll translate Monday into, okay, today is Monday. She must mean Monday. It'll validate that for me. I don't have to write any of that code. And we have a bunch of custom built-in slots that you can do exactly that. What about flower types? Now, flower types isn't built in, but it's something that, of course, it did it for me, but I'll show you how you can do it yourself. And in this case, it is using the expand values, which means I have these three. As people type, I'll learn more about these types of flowers that is for this bot. Now, what you can do, and I think you've seen this with some of the other bots, is I can restrict the slots to values, but I can also use synonyms. So if I said tulips, and of course I know nothing about flowers, so I don't know what the synonym for tulip will be, but let's pretend it was, I don't know, what's another flower? Anyone good in flowers? I don't know. But yeah, there you go. So let's pretend they were synonymous. I could then change this to restrict the values to tulips, but anything that was similar to tulips that maybe you were trying to figure out that you wanted tulips, but you didn't really know a name like me, as I suck obviously in flowers. And it can say, okay, if they say any of these other ones, I'll immediately know they want tulips, and then I don't have to write any more of that code either. And I'll show you that with my own custom bot. So this is how you would create your own custom slot. You just give it a name. I would say, you know, what I want, and that's it. And I would add that slot either to the intent or add it so I can use it in future bots. All right, so now that I know that I don't have any of these slots filled. And how do I know that? Even by testing, it says that I need a response to fill these. And so it says, okay, I have no flower type, no pickup date, no pickup time. You see all of these are null. So it is going to want to get those answers. Now, how do I understand what to ask the user? When I create my slot, so I have, as you see, the custom flower types as my slot. I gave that flower type a name that says flower types. And I'm going to show you how you can add these to the bot in a minute. And here is what I want to prompt to get this information. So I want to prompt, what type of flowers would you like to order? And all I did is type it there. Lex would handle the rest. Now, when I type the kind of flowers, so at this point, I have no validation in here. I just created it. I'm not tying it to lambdas on. I'm going to say tulips. It's going to ask me now, okay, I know that now you have tulips. I now have elicited that type. It'll automatically put that slot in, and it knows the next thing it needs to get, and this is automatically, is a pickup date. Pickup date, if you remember, I said, is a custom Amazon built-in type. And this is both for Lex and Alexa. So I don't have to worry about whether I said, you know, the actual date, did I put it in right, 11/6/2017, if I said Tuesday, or if I said tomorrow. So what if I said tomorrow? it knew that tomorrow means 11/7/2017. So all of that, I don't have to write that code for, which is lovely. If you ever had to deal with date manipulation, it can be a little dicey. Lex also allows you, if you're tying a Lambda, to determine what time zone you want to be in. So it will pick up your time zone that's it registered if you're in your browser, your client, or you can actually set the time zone in Lambda by just using a simple process.env.tz in Node, or similar concepts in Java, C#, or Python. Okay, no worries. So it asked me, okay, it wants to pick up the tulips at what time on tomorrow? Because remember, all I said was tomorrow. It handled the date for me. Now, this is the only caveat of this. Now, I have a pickup time. It is also a built-in slot. Let me scroll down so you can see. Amazon time. So again, I don't have to handle that. Only thing I will have to do is if I choose this built-in slot and I don't have a fulfillment hook, which I don't right now, is I need to make sure I put in PM and AM. Only caveat, could be good or bad, because if I just put in 3, it's going to say, okay, and remember, I don't have any customizations here at all. Okay, 3, I don't know what 3 means because you have no PM, no AM. What does 3 mean? If I say 3 PM, however, it knows that, and it will convert this dynamically. If you want it to be more customized, you can obviously do this. But again, this is me not doing anything else, just the bot is ready to go. Okay, your tulips will be ready for pickup tomorrow at 3 p.m. Of course, it's using the GMT time. And does this sound okay? At this point, you'll see every time I did something, that dialog state here changed to see what state it was for the intent. This is something that happens without you having to do anything. First, it said I need to elicit slots. Remember, I told you those code helpers would make sense in a minute. Elicit slots means the things that I've asked to be required for my bot have yet to be fulfilled, and so I can't complete what you're asking as of yet. When I get that information, it's going to then say, okay, great, I have this information. I want to confirm that what I have is correct. So when I get to the confirm intent, that's the dialog state, and again, Lex does this for you, I either say yes or no, and based upon the yes or no, this is where that confirmation prompt comes in. And again, I can customize that to be something different, but again, I just said, hey, use this plain vanilla bot. And the confirmation here, it says, okay, your flowers are ready for pickup at this time. It'll be a cost if I configure, which I will in a minute, configure a different cost. Does this sound okay? Or I can just say your flower type will be ready for pickup. Does this sound okay? Again, this is just something that's built in. I can add more prompts of what I want to do to be confirmed based upon other slots that I have. So it is up to you. But once I do that, it will give me this back based upon the slots I've completed. If the user says no, you want to say something, you just don't want to go gently into that good night, right? So you can say cancel. If the user says no, okay, no worries, I won't place your order. So this time I guess I want the tulip, so I'll say yes. You'll notice that then, because I'm just giving data back to the client and I'm in test, it says intent flowers is ready for fulfillment, flower tulips, pickup date, et cetera, et cetera. And this is because in my fulfillment, I'm not saying I want a custom goodbye. I'm just saying return the data back to the client. So if you were in a browser or something else and you're using this, this will absolutely be there for you. Now, all I have to do to get this even more granular, like I want to calculate price, for instance, or I want to make sure they only select tulips, lilies, and roses. I'm not going to set those synonyms like I talked about. I actually want to validate that they're doing it. Now I can do that easily in Lex as well, like I said, with the synonyms. But let's say I didn't want to do that for whatever reason. I can do that also in the fulfillment bot. So once this code, as you see, is done for me, I'll show you a custom one in a minute. But that's done. I'm good with that code. All I have to do to tie this to Lex is to scroll up and click this button here. And it says, okay, you want to initialize your values and validate with a code hook. And then it'll show me the Lambda functions. Now, I have a bunch of them, and I totally don't remember what I named it, so I think that's right. Hopefully it looks right. It says you're about to give Lex permission to invoke your Lambda function. You don't have to go out to create the appropriate role for it. we will do that for you to give Lambda just the permissions. Remember, AWS is least privilege to evoke this specific Lex bot with this specific Lambda function. So if I say OK here, it's going to add to that policy that I created for that Lambda function just to run this bot. So now I have a code hook and a code validation there. Great. Well, what if I want to change my fulfillment where it doesn't return just the parameters to the client? Because that's what I have it doing right now. I don't have anything fancy coming back. I'm just saying return the values that you get to the client. So I want at this point to use, and I can use that same Lambda function, or I can create a new Lambda function. It's up to you. I, being somewhat lazy and crippled typing here lately, will use that same one. And all I have to do is determine what the dialog hook is coming back. So we're going to go back to that code in a minute once I show you how this works. So now I have a code handler, if you will, a cloud function, and that is going to a serverless, by the way. So it's not something I had to go and do a web service for, none of that. I just did it right here. It's already ready to go. Now, what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to save my intent. But wait, what if my Lambda function, let's just say I was really lazy, even though they kind of did it for me, so I kind of am lazy, but what if it did not have an appropriate goodbye message, right? What if I just skipped that part? It was like, great, I gave you the data back. I don't want to say goodbye because you don't need to hear me say goodbye. I can actually put here, what do I want to say when it's finished? So I can put a goodbye message here. Now, mind you, if I have a goodbye message in my Lambda function, it will override this. If I don't, here's what we call a fallback to say something other than it just went away and the user doesn't know what it is. So I can, and also I can put slots in this. So I can say, thanks for your, I think I named that flower type order. So if it's tulips, it'll say, thanks for your tulips order. I can do the, and then I can hit save intent. So it's going to save this intent. And now when it runs this, instead of just eliciting things just from what I have in Lex, it is actually then going to go to Lambda and say, okay, I want to do some validations. Maybe I want to call a backend, a NoSQL database or RDS, or maybe I want to call Elasticsearch and have it do a search across the web or anything at this point. The world is my oyster because all I did was add that hook in. So I'm going to go ahead and build this one now. It's going to say you can start testing once your build completes successfully. Now, I promise that I said, and I do not want to be made a liar, that it can say do voice. So when this finished building, this time when I go through the bot, what I will do this time is actually speak to the bot. Oh, I'm turn it up loud, cross my fingers, you know, that the volume works here, that it will then do the same things but return voice. And I want you to pay attention to the inspect response because you'll see that it takes what I said, it goes off to Poly, and it will translate what I said. You don't have to do anything for this to do this. And then it will create a transcript of the verbiage in text so that you can determine what happens. So I have it's finished building. Now, okay, so I'm going to do sound. Am I good for the sound? Wait, maybe, okay. Aha, okay. The little crazy noise says I am, so let's cross our fingers. So now I want to chat. Order flowers. You'll see that it says audio input.
What type of flowers would you like to order?
So now it's talking back to me. I didn't have to do anything to make that happen. What am I supposed to be ordering? We'll do roses this time. Roses.
What day do you want the roses to be picked up?
Let's say, remember, I don't have to do anything to do this dates as well because they're built in. So if I say Thursday, well, spelling is probably good to do. If I type Thursday, it will still take it and it will send it back in text. If I say Thursday, same thing will happen. Thursday.
Pick up the roses at what time on November 9th, 2017?
No need to have to manipulate what is Thursday, do any calculations. That built-in slot will do it for you. And then remember, here's the only caveat with the time. You got to do that PM or AM. Now, here's the trick, and I'll show you this in code. Now I have this Lambda fulfillment in there. And I said, I only want to pick up the roses when the store is open. Kind of makes sense, right? So if I say 3 a.m., because now I have this Lambda back in, it should tell me no. Let's see what happens. 3 a.m. Who picks up flowers at 3 a.m.?
Our business hours are from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Can you specify a time during this range?
Right. So let me do the right thing now. 11 a.m.
Okay, your roses will be ready for pickup by 11 o'clock on November 9th, 2017, and will cost $25. Does this sound okay?
Now, before I go on, remember I told you guys to pay attention to this down here. The slots are being elicited. It's going to confirm an intent. Now, remember, this confirmation is, okay, your roses will be ready for pickup is my confirmation prompt. Now, my fulfillment will say, it can say thanks for your flower order, or if I have a fulfillment in my Lambda function, which I actually do, it'll give me that response. So I think $25 is okay. We're going to say yes, or I can say it. See, I want to type so bad. Yes.
Thanks. Your order for roses has been placed and will be ready for pickup by 11 o'clock on November 9th, 2017.
And I'm done. So now I have this bot ready, and we're going to get into a custom one, but what if I want to put it now on the web? How difficult is that? And remember, this supports all kind of languages. So I'm going to cheat a little bit because I actually wrote this for someone the other day who, so I did a stint at another company that was up here. So C# is a good friend of mine. I don't know why people don't like it. I like C#. So one of my coworkers needed C# bot for his enterprise. And so I took this standard one and I created this. And I'm going to show you how I did that because it's really simple. This is actually, if you go to this link, you can play with it now. And this is where you can interface CI/CD with it just by going to CodeStart and say, I want to create either a ASP.NET Core like I did here, or a Node.js, or a Java Spring. And then all I have to do is for permissions, go to Cognito. I'm going to walk through this, but I'm going to tell you first. Go to Cognito, say these are the appropriate permissions I want to have. And then I can spit this bot alias out to it. And I'm done. And this is what I actually did for this, other than trying to make it pretty. And I know you guys don't know me, but that is really, really hard for me. So that took the most time versus building the bot. So here I have this is an ASP.NET Core. So this is running on both. I have a link for it running on Windows, running on Linux, on different flavors of it. But all I did to make this bot happen, other than the painstaking trying to make it look nice, because that's the part for me, is to actually just say what alias, what permissions, and using Cognito, so you don't have to do even any kind of username, password. Please don't put those out on GitHub. We find them all the time. And then I'm ready to go. So I kind of put instructions here. So order flowers, because I added that in. And all I do is hit enter, because that's kind of what you do. And then it says, okay, what type of flowers you want to order. You know the situation, I'm not going through that again. I can do whatever. Right. Now, that's great. This is all built by Lex. What if you want to do your own? Because I know that's what you're thinking. That's great. You just cheated. No, we're going to do one that has nothing to do with this. And to prove it, I am actually going to, I'm going to close this now. I'm going to show you, my coworker did a blog on Book Trip. He did a blog on this about Book Trick Let's Bots. It's one of our samples. I'm going to literally take half his code and just make my own bot work within his code by changing 3 lines. I mean, it's his code and whatever. So I can, once I create a bot, no matter whether it's custom or whether it's a sample or whether you went on AWS Labs and found it, once you create a bot, now I can deploy this even to the mobile, to the web, and also to talk back and forth to things like Facebook Messenger and the like. So, okay, so let's go back to Lex to prove this. So I'm finished with this one. I'm going to hit clear. So I did 2 bots. The Devoxx one is more complicated. We're going to get to it. I'll do the one I did simple. So I want to do a coffee bot. So his was a book trip. I figured it was cold here. I'm from Georgia, so this is really cold for me, by the way. And so I wanted to do coffee or tea or something warm. So we're going to do a coffee bot. And by the way, all the code that I'll show you, I will push to either the AWS Labs repo or my own personal GitHub repo, so you can have at it. So you'll see that as I was shivering here, I was thinking about, okay, what do I want? So I talked about beverage size, beverage type, do I want creamer, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have to require, by the way, all of these slots. I can just have some of them. And I can say how I want this to go. So let's say if I wanted to add something that says order, if I could type if I want to have the slot in there, all I have to do is open the braces and then put the slot name. So I want to say beverage type. So I hit plus, and now I've added another utterance to my coffee bot. It's literally that simple. So at this point, I know that beverage type needs to be required, and I've required beverage size. But I can also say things like, I want a creamer in it, and everyone doesn't want creamer, so I didn't require that. Or I want to say how hot or cold it could be. And so in this same thing that you just saw me do, I created a Lambda function. Now, let's go back to the Lambda function. So now hopefully those illicit slots things you saw and the close makes more sense. So back at my Lambda function, that's that hook. Let's go to the one that I actually created called Coffee Bot, a cafe bot, or what did I say? Cafe order coffee. Obviously, I need coffee because I don't remember the own name of what I did. So here we go. So I have a constant here. Mind you, I don't have to do this. And when I get to the Devoxx one, I'll show you that I didn't do it. I have a constant here that is for beverage type because I want to restrict these beverage types. I'm just showing you all the ways you can do it. It's up to you. You're the developers. You decide what you want to do with this. So on a chai, I said I only want to accept that chai can say, you can either say a small or a short, depending on how you want to order it. But for a mocha, it can be a short, a small, a medium, or large. So I can restrict it to those. So I've created just a simple little JSON array that's what it's going to do. Now, this should make more sense now that you saw me do the bot. Illicit slot means that all the slots that are required are not filled. And so I can create a little helper function that says, I want the next step that Lex should do is elicit this slot, and I can give it a custom message. What I also can do is elicit a slot to have a response card there. And that's just as simple as creating a JSON of what I wanted it to be and links to images or links to other things on the web, and just pass that back to the helper function elicit slot. Confirm intent. Remember, we looked at that when you were going through the browser. Confirm intent means just what it says. I am finished. I have all the slots. I want to make sure that I got the information right. So the user is going to say yes or no. And what do I want to do when they say yes or no? So I have a confirm intent function. And close. Remember I said I can put the goodbye into the Lex service or either into my function. So I have a close. Now these things that you see here, you kind of should see things are repeating. Session attributes are things I want to send back to the client. Like when I did my order of flowers, I calculated literally the calculation for that was the length of the word times 5. That's how the price came to be, seriously. And so I wanted to send that back to the browser as the price. And so session attributes could be things that are not slots, are not things that are related to your bot at all, but you want to send that back to the bot as information and go back. And they can be stored across that user ID, and you can add as many as you want. So that's what the session attributes come in. And then I have delegate. Delegate means I have everything I need, but I don't want to do anything. Lex, you handle it. So I literally can say, Lex, you have it. Send back this to them, and Lex, whatever prompts you have or whatever confirmation you have, you handle that. I don't want to validate anything. So I also have a function that says I'm going to delegate the responsibility to figure out what's next to Lex. As you see, it can handle that. And then finally, I have a few helper functions to build the message and build a response card. Because remember, I can have a response card about saying, hey, you can only do these certain things for the different beverages. So that's kind of the function here that I have. Nothing really difficult. I have a few things about key exist and everything else just because I was playing around. Now, order beverage is where some of the heavy lifting happens. So I have this function called output session attributes. Remember I said I can store things I want here. And then I want the source. The invocation source is what's really important. And if you paid attention in the browser, when we were running through those, whether or not it was in voice or text, you would see it changed to be dialog code hook because I said I wanted this dialog to be validated from a code hook. So when you do that, what comes back to Lambda as far as what's been invocated is a code hook. And that will do the validations on what is there. So I want to get what the slots are. If the beverage type has information, then okay, I want to track that as a constant. If not, it's null. We'll go for it. It also passes back null, but this is me just, again, being anal retentive, just making sure that null got there correctly. Beverage size, beverage temp. Then I can say, okay, if the beverage type is not there, or both of the key doesn't exist for the appropriate one, which means I said chai latte, but I wanted a large chai, but we're only offering small and short, then I need to build that response back and elicit that slot that they need to do it over. So you remember when I said 3 and it was like, we don't know what you're talking about. It came back with asked you the question again. This is where I can do that. And then I can customize that message instead of saying, just repeating what time again, like duh. Instead of doing that, I can say, hey, sorry, we don't do X, Y, and Z, a mocha and chai. What kind of beverage do you want? And then I can build a response card as well and say, okay, today's menu item, that they can actually click on those buttons and that will fulfill the slot as well. So this is what this function is doing. Very simple. Again, we support multiple languages. I showed you the .NET one. So I wrote this function in .NET. I also have one for Star Wars that I worked with one of my coworkers, Arun, that we wanted to have a Java one. So you'll see all of that on GitHub. And again, it doesn't matter what language you want. We support it. Another thing that you should note is you can do a few environmental variables. I don't have one here, but I'll show you in the Devoxx. Environmental variables is that what if I want to dynamically change the table that I get data from? You don't want to rebuild this all over again. You don't want to have to wait for Lex to catch up because now something happened and it's building again. You don't want to do that. You want to dynamically be able to change your data to be another table. Well, I can automatically, whether this is through the CLI, through the console, through our API, switch out an environmental variable, and then in my code, as long as I have process.env with whatever the environmental variable is, it will dynamically pick that one. So now I don't have to worry about dynamically changing the data source. Let's say I went from production to dev, but this code is good, but now I have to rebuild and we have to wait to push to dev. I don't have to worry about that. I can just then change the environmental variable to point to the right thing. All right. That is that bot. So that is finished. Let's see if I can use my coworker's code. So I have his code, and I'll copy it over if you don't believe me, just because I don't think you guys believe me. He has this here. So I'm going to take, not all of that. Scrolling a little too fast. Let's try that one more time. I just want his code. The whole finger thing is, you never know you needed all of the fingers to type until now. Okay, so I'm going to just get his code and try to do it slowly this time and not let my bandage hit everything. Okay, I'm just going to take his code as it is. And I will warn you, it's not going to be pretty because I know him well. He's not good at pretty either, but it'll work, so that's all that counts. All right, so I'm going to take this HTML code. You see that he's doing it against book trip. And all I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to do HTML page because that's what it is. I'm going to take all that out. I'm going to hit paste. This is his bot, not mine. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the alias of this so that my bot will work because that's all I have to do. Let's see. He has his alias here in la la la. So he has cognito identity. If you guys are not familiar with cognito identity, I can use a federated identity versus passing in username and password to access any services. So if I go back to, of course, I created my own. You see I have coffee bot ID pool, and I've given it to permissions here. And I can also do unauthenticated. Well, it would dynamically create a temporary token. The only thing I need to do to use this pool is, I'm going to cheat because I'm just going to go and sample code and copy it here. It's easier. Is take this key right here, which gives you access to nothing without the rest of the permissions. That's what's great about it. So I can show it on film, and I don't care what you do with it because you can't really do a lot with it because I have granulated the permissions down to my account. But if I copy that, and then I go back to Visual Studio, which I actually love Visual Studio, and copy the ID pool into his code there. So now I have permissions to get to the right one. Let's see, for his user ID, he's passing in for unique user ID chatbot demo now. I'll leave that, that's fine. And then he is somewhere, here it is. He has his bot alias has been whatever the latest alias is. So I can either do a specific alias, remember I said versioning is baked in, or I can say just take the last one. Now his bot name is Book Trip because he used that, and my bot name is not that. So let me go back to my bot. My bot is named Coffee Bot Demo. And if I hit, I'll just build it one more time just to make sure everything's good. I'm going to hit publish. And the minute I hit publish, what it's going to do is ask me about, do I want to get an alias for this version or not? So I can either put an alias, so this gets a specific version, and you'll see every time I publish and build, it'll get multiple versions. I think I'm on 2 or 3 because I built this earlier before I came. It's awfully slow, and I think just because I'm standing up here in front of you guys, it wants to be slow, but okay, whatever. We can wait for you. Thank you. Then I'm going to hit publish. It's going to say the alias. I can choose an alias, or I can, create a new one. It's going to publish, and that says it's going to take a couple of minutes. But now that I know what the alias is, I'll let it think. And I'll go back here, and I'll put in the name of my bot, which I said was what? Coffee bot demo? Okay, yeah. I just read that. Don't know why I didn't know that. Okay, Coffee bot demo. Now, my alias is the same as my name, so that's kind of easy, but I want to get the latest one. I have multiple versions of it. I can either do the alias for the last one or the alias for ones before, create a new alias, blah, blah, blah. I don't need to do that. I'm just going to say take the latest one. So at this point, I shouldn't need to change anything else. Let's see, he has his code where he's going to show a response in a div. Okay, great. I've changed my Cognito. Right now I'm in US East. That's where I built the bot in. Okay, I think I'm good. So I'm going to save this as Devoxx coffee demo. Hit save. All right, let me just make sure that's finished building. It is great. You see I'm on version 2 of this alias, but that's fine. I don't care. Now I'm going to go back to CoffeeBot demo, whatever. And if I take this, I'm going to just open the containing folder. And I'm just going to open it. I have a bot going. Now it says book trip because remember I didn't change his thing. So just so you know that I didn't make this up, let me go and change it. He says, shows it how blah, 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 book trip. I'll say coffee bot, hit save, go back, hit refresh. Okay, coffee bot, so you see I did not cheat. And then I want to order, I'm going to say a large, which it doesn't like because there are no large. Remember, that's what I have in there. If I could type. Order a large chai. No, sorry, we don't have this size. Consider a small. What size? Now, I'm purposely, for demo purposes, spitting back out what the next step it will be. So you'll see it says illicit slot. You obviously don't have to do that. This is literally just for demo purposes. That's why I'm spitting that back out. So it says consider a small. So what if I say order a small or a short, because I know that it likes that. And then it'll ask me, do I want it iced or hot? Because that's the next thing. And remember, it's eliciting a slot. So right now it's eliciting the slot for the beverage temperature. The beverage temp is the name of the slot. So I'm going to say hot because it's cold here. And it's going to say, you would like me to order a short chai. Is that right? You'll notice that now it's changed to confirm intent. This is where I should get my confirmation message. That's where it's showing that, yes or no. So if I say no, it'll say something different than yes. Remember, we went through that. I say yes, great. Your chai will be available for pickup soon. Checking at time. Okay. Thanks for using CoffeeBot, and my slot is now fulfilled, and I can do it again or whatever. So that is how easy it is to get this out to the web. It is also really easy to push this to mobile. So I could literally go into the console and go into what we have as Mobile Hub and choose a selection that says Conversational Bots. And at that point, guess what? I have a mobile application that I can download either for Android or for iOS that is completely functional that also has a bot in it. I know my time is almost up, so let me just show you one more thing and then I will be done for it, but so I won't do the mobile thing. Unfortunately, I'm out of time. If you wanted to take your bot, so as I said, and I won't obviously have time to show you the Devoxx BE session bot, but if I wanted to take this bot and to push it to Alexa, because you guys have Alexas and you want to walk around and say, what's the next session that's happening in Devoxx? All I would need to do to make sure this skill is functional is select which one. We'll just do coffee because I just did that. And hit export. It'll say what version do you want, 1 or 2, since 2 is the latest. And then I want the format to be in the Alexa skills format because I want now this coffee bot for you to be able to order it by saying, Alexa, order whatever. So I can hit that and hit export. It will download, and once it does that, then all I have to do is go into, I thought I brought it up. Yeah, here it is. Amazon's portal and create a CoffeeBot test. Now, I haven't uploaded anything because I wanted you guys to see how simple this is. I can hit launch a skill builder. It'll open up the skill builder test. And at this point in time, all I would need to do to make this happen is to cut and paste the JSON for this into my intent, my build model. I have very little time left, so I'm gonna open it up for questions while I bring back my slides. So any questions so far? Anyone? Bueller? Okay. All right, guess not. So I am going to finish up with my slides, and I had a bunch of them, but I kind of covered all of this because who wants to look at slides anyway? So I'll just do the good employee thing to let you guys know that we also have monitoring. So everything you're doing in here actually goes to CloudTrail. If you know what that is, it tracks all of the API's calls. With my Lambda function, I can click a button that says X-ray, and now I can have distributed tracing. So that means whether or not I call the REST API, whether or not I call other AWS services, whether or not I call Twilio and Twitter or whatever, I can have a trace log of all of those so I can debug that better. So we not only have monitoring, so you can have the missed utterance count. So as I said, it was learning, but you can track what your bot is doing. I get asked this question, so for once in my life, I actually put pricing in a slide. Be amazed, because I have never done this before, because I never know what it is. So, but I've been asked this enough that I thought it would be good. So there's a free tier where you have for text 10,000 requests per month. For the price for 1,000 texts is 75 cents, and for speech it is $4. And for the free tier, you get 5,000 requests per speech a month. I had to literally ask one of the sales guys how to say that right. All right. And then the final thing you should know is that with Amazon Lex technology, you have a multi-platform client. You can do responses. You can tie to Facebook Messenger. Again, these were some of the things I wanted to show you in the Devoxx bot, but don't worry, I'm going to push it out in GitHub. And so you can have an SDK to customize for whatever language. You also can tie this to IoT. So if you're really interested on AWS Labs, we have a very cool thing where we have a Raspberry Pi that is functioning as a bot and talking back and forth and making robots and other things move. And that code is also open source as well. You can do this through the console or the API, so through an HTTP request or the console. I showed you the console today. And again, it has both speech and text, so ASR as well as NLU. And then I can do Lambda for fulfillment. And all those services, whether you want authentication, Cognito, CloudTrail, and CloudWatch, give me all the logs and all the tracing. All right, I am done with 5 minutes to spare. I'm so proud of myself. All right, well, if you guys have any questions, I'll be around. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye.
Okay, good afternoon. So the topic you probably already know, it's conversational bots, but we're now going to look at the IBM implementation based on Watson, and I have here my colleague, so I'm Eric Cattoir. I have my colleague Yves de Beer, and we will first, I will introduce a few things, explain a few things. We can probably go a bit quicker because a lot of the concepts are obviously quite the same. And then we will show you also how it works, how you can build such a bot based on some of the content of the Devoxx presentations. So, in fact, we have in the cloud this bluemix.net website where one of the collection of services that you will find is a set of Watson services. So what's this? In fact, this is a split of originally IBM made this Watson engine to participate in the Jeopardy quiz. What we've been doing now is split this off in a number of smaller APIs, smaller components that you can use. And there is various kind of things in there. There will be the chatbot capability, which will be the conversation, but there is also things there like translation, there is visual recognition, there is speech to text if you want to speak to a chatbot, for example. There is some sentiment analysis, which you could use to analyze your conversations, your bot conversations, and see how the sentiment of the person reacting is, etc. So the thing is, you can combine all these APIs and bring it together with the chatbot. For example, you could have a chatbot where somebody sends in an image, you could analyze that image and use what comes out of that analysis also in the chat conversation. Let's now look at the principal ones, because that's also the ones which we're going to use in the demonstration. So first of all, there is the conversation service. The conversation service will be a lot like some of the things you have already been seeing. You will be able to train it based on some intents and entities, and then it will allow you to create a dialog function, and you will be able to interact. Now, we have a nice addition to that, and that is the Watson Discovery Service. What is the Discovery Service about? It's actually a cognitive search engine. So what can you do with it? You can feed it a lot of text, and it will try to analyze those texts, find relationships, and so on. And you can then use that to answer also questions. So you can ask a question. The Discovery Service will search into the content and try to find pieces of content that correspond to that kind of question. And in fact, in a lot of chatbot scenarios, we see the combination of both capabilities to implement the full solution. And we will go further into that later on. So the basis, in fact, as you've seen at some of the previous speakers, in most cases you want to have these multi-channel capabilities. We do that based on a bot framework, so you're able to deploy your bot towards various kind of channels, whether it's a Slack channel, a messenger interface, your own web page where you add a bot, or also things like Internet of Things. You could also add a robot. So we have quite some examples with Pepper robots and those kind of things. So then the next step is the application, which will then use the Watson Conversation service. It will make use of the concept of workspaces, so you can in fact create multiple workspaces for different purposes. Things like supporting multiple languages, supporting different kind of dialogues for different purposes. And there is also the possibility to enrich your conversation with content coming from other backend systems. So you could interact with your customer relationship management system. You could interact with some API that is available to get some more information and enrich the conversation with that kind of information. A typical example could be in the Bluemix. We also have a weather API, so you could use that weather API to enrich the content. Now, in the building blocks of this conversation service, there is again natural language processing. So what is that going to do? That is going to identify what the question is really about. So, and we will see, we also use the concept of using intents. So what do you really want to achieve? And then you can specify or clarify those intents by using entity extraction out of the text. And that's the kind of things you will also need to provide examples for to train the conversation service. And then that will then be arranged into a dialog flow where you can do those other things like enriching the content. What are intents? It's typically some action that you want to do. I want to locate something, I want to order something. So that is typically the intent. How you train the system? You will give it some examples of how does somebody locate something. For example, you could, let's assume we're doing a bot for a hotel reception desk. You could ask, put example questions like, where can I find the gym? How do I get to the gym? And all those kind of things, which are examples of the intent. I want to locate a particular location in the hotel. Next, you will need to know what does the person asking the question want to locate, and that's going to be done by entities. And the entities, you're again going to train the system by giving some examples. I already did it, so it could be in the example of locating something. You could say examples are the gym, the bar, the breakfast room, all those kind of things could be examples of entities. Again, you can train by adding some examples, but you can also use things like regular expressions in there to do some more complex kind of matching. And there will also be some system entities, because there is a number of topics which you don't want to all program yourself. So there will be things like dates. So you will be able to say, I want to order this tomorrow, and the system will be able to interpret that and know that tomorrow is the 7th of November, for example. So that is the entities. How are you typically going to do that? You will start from your frequently asked questions, your help desk knowledge, whatever subject matter expert, and he's gonna then put that information, create those examples, and feed that into the system. And one of the nice things about it is that you don't really need to do any programming for this, so it can be done. We have some examples where some people with almost no IT knowledge have been creating this content and feeding the system with that kind of content. Once you have the intents and the entities, you're going to create a dialog flow. So there you can basically graphically decide how the dialogue is going to flow, what will be certain input conditions. You could do some pre-creation. You could get some information out of the context. So your dialogue will also keep track of a context, which you can then gradually enrich with either information coming out of the conversation or information coming out of some other sources, some other API calls that you have been doing, etc. And then, of course, you can always use those values in the response that you're giving to the user. And those responses, you can either have a fixed response on a particular dialogue node. You can also do some things like randomize so that your bot becomes a more natural kind of speaker and is not always answering exactly in the same way to a particular question. In the context, you will keep track of all the information, bit similar to some of the other examples that we've seen. So I could say I want to order something, then of course you will need to add additional information, ask additional questions like what exactly do you want to order, which product, what kind of quantity, and all those kind of things. You will keep that into the context, and that can then be used in the further interactions with the same user. We have also some possibilities to, and that's an option, to store some of the data of the conversations. We have that optionally because there is some discussions on privacy if you store information about interactions with customers. But you have the option to do it. When you do it, there is also possibilities to perform analytics on it, which can then again be used to enhance the training. So you can figure out where there's some questions that we couldn't answer, where did we lose the customer in the dialogue, etc., and then use that information to retrain or enhance the trainment of the bot. Now, what we notice is that in many of the cases we analyze, you have this kind of difference between the short tail and the long tail. And what do we mean by that? The short tail is typically those questions that come back over and over again. And in many situations, we presume that's like somewhere between 30 and 100 questions in a typical help desk that come over and over again. And of course, those are then easy to create intents. So you would create intents for them, you would handle them with entities, and you can proactively handle those questions. There is, however, many situations where you will have some question that doesn't fall into that kind of section. And that's what we call this long tail. So it's the questions that come up only occasionally. We can try to handle that in different other ways. So one other way will be to use the Watson discovery and feed that discovery with a large knowledge base so that hopefully there we can find some answers. And that's also what we will show in the demonstration. The other thing you can, of course, do is when the dialogue doesn't flow anymore, is that you hand over to, for example, a call center and then really use some of your human agents to continue the conversation where you left off and, for example, then hopefully provide that human person with already all the context that was collected so that they don't have to re-ask all those questions again. We have some examples where you could also use the sentiment analysis to already warn your agent that a customer is getting upset or the customer is happy or whatever. Yeah. So let's then move. So this was just a short overview. There's lots of more things we can do, but let's now move to a short demo showing how you can use those things together and how you can build a solution. And Yves is actually gonna explain how that is built and how we can do that.
Okay, thank you, Eric. So what we built for this session is in fact a sort of a Devoxx chatbot, which I will provide you the link afterwards before you start playing with it during the demo. So what it's made of is we're using a React as an application front end to interact with the chatbot. Is calling an API, which is exposed as a sequence within our OpenWhisk cloud functions within the cloud platform. So it's a serverless component that runs in the cloud as a sequence, and the sequence contains, in fact, 2 calls. The first call is a call to the conversation, and that will handle typical conversations like hello and what you want to achieve. And if he doesn't find the answer within the conversation, he will trigger it off to the discovery to have research in that repository to see if he can find an answer. So what I did was for the discovery services, I loaded up all the sessions from Devoxx, which are available, in fact, as an API. Typically, they give you back one JSON file with all the sessions for 1 day. So I had to write an additional script to make a JSON file for each presentation, each session. And in the back, I will show you how we will use the Watson conversation and the discovery service. Let's see if I can. So here I'm in the Bluemix dashboard, the cloud platform, where I have defined the conversation and the discovery service. Now, first of all, I want to show you how the chatbot will look like. So it's a React application. And it says, okay, what would you like me to do? I can just say, find, if I can type it, find session. And then he says, okay, I can help you in finding a speaker session by topic or by speaker. And for example, are you looking for a speaker or a topic? I can say a speaker. What is the name of the speaker you're looking for? I just put in my colleague's name. And of course, this is not something that you will find within the conversation dialog, but we detect that it's not something that he finds, so we need to call off to the discovery service. And that's where all the sessions have been loaded up, and he does a search within that catalog of sessions. So here we see that Eric is doing this session and also another session later this week. And we included also the links. You can find the full details of that session. Now, something else you could, well, typically you can always say hello to the chatbot or other questions you could answer or ask in a conversation. But I can also use the query language from the discovery service. For example, if I'm looking for a topic, which topic are you interested in? I can use the query language. For example, I have here room 4 as a day. I can paste that one in. Oh, something, room ID 4, sorry. So what we're doing here is we want to know all the sessions that are having place in room 4 on Monday. And again, it goes search to the discovery service, and there we find all the sessions that are happening here in room 4 with the time slots available in there. So this is basically the kind of chatbot we built. Now, looking back to the conversation itself, so we can see how it is all built up. We can launch the conversation tool. And then we will see that by default you get a car dashboard as a sample you can start with. And the Devoxx is the one I created for this. Again, here you have the type of language that you can choose at the moment that you create the workspace. When I go in there, again, you see the intents. For example, the Devoxx session info. I provided some information. For example, can you tell me more about a session, a speaker, that kind of thing. So the more sentences you put in, the more correct the system becomes. We also have the entities. For example, a category where I defined a speaker, a track, a schedule, and some other entities. And you can add synonyms, multiple synonyms, to identify what you're trying to achieve here. So once this is defined, we can set up the dialogue. And typically, well, you have a welcome to start the conversation. Here you already see the debug information, which is in fact just a JSON output that is sent. And as Eric mentioned, we also have context information in there. So you see when the session starts, it sets the application action to off, meaning that, well, we don't want to call the discovery service when we start the conversation. And we want to put in this context as soon as we are ready to talk to the discovery service. And then, as I did in the demo, he will go through that scenario where we detect that it's something we want to know about sessions, and then we can drill in more deeper. Now, the nice thing about this service is that I don't need a front-end application to test this as I'm defining all the entities and intents. I can just try it out here. So if I would say, find sessions, same as I did in the web application, I get some more details about which entity, which intent is called, so I can drill down and see how it's reacting. Same thing here. You're looking for a speaker or topic. What's the name of the speaker? I see on the left that at which point in the dialogue I'm currently have entered. What's the name of the speaker? Again, I can type it in. And as you see here, it outputs something that we didn't see on the web interface. It says that question is out of scope. But what we do in here is, in fact, in the context, as you see, we are setting the application action to call discovery. So when it goes through the API, it detects that there's an application action call discovery, and it will call the discovery service to find the right answer for that. So typically that is something that you can play with the context to drive the full conversation, and even to store user information or credit card information, things like that. Now the other service we're using for that, if I go back to the dashboard, is the discovery service. The discovery service allows you to put in lots of data, can be XML, JSON, PDFs, whatever kind of text documents. And it will try to structure that in order to be able to query that data. So what I did is I took, well, if you want to see, this is the REST API that is available from the Devoxx conference. Discovery service. So I have 243 sessions that are happening this week are loaded up into the discovery service as different documents. Now the same thing, I can choose here to query this collection, and it can be queried within using natural language. And I can also, for example, say, give me the sessions on day equal to Monday, add another rule, and say, this is room ID needs to be equal to room 4, and I can just run the query. And I get back 5 JSON files. And I can also drill down and see what this JSON actually looks like. So this is the data that we get back within our web client, and that we can treat and then present, as you saw, in the chat interface. Or we can also search more particular, doing some natural language or any question you want to ask here. And then I see on Monday, indeed, we have one session we found back. And this is the session that has Eric. So that concludes mainly the whole setup, as we saw here. So the setup calling from the React.js application, calling a sequence, handing off to the conversation and the discovery service. Now to close things off, this is not the right one. I want to show you how the cloud functions, so based on Apache OpenWhisk, how these are created to handle this application. So we have one discovery sequence, so that is triggering first the conversation and then the discovery. If we look into the conversation, which is a Node.js small application that in fact calls the Watson conversation and then calls out to the service using parameters that we put in as a username, password, things like that, in order to get to the conversation service that we have defined. And then the other one, the discovery service, which also calls to the discovery service, but there we see, if I find it back, that, for example, as we defined in our context that we want to call the discovery, it detects that the application action is there, and then it goes and calls and does the same query to the discovery service as we have defined it over there. So basically, this is how these functions, these serverless functions work. And then we have defined this as an API. So my React.js application calls an API from this site and then is able to get the response back. There's also a monitor capability here. So we can see that the last interaction was here conversation with the sequence first. So this is the main entry point. He calls off to the conversation. We can see the whole details about the intents and everything. We have some loggings that we can define here. So this is nice to debug. And then at the moment where the discovery service is entered, then we can combine those both and have a view here how it all works. So this allows also to extend it with other functionalities. For example, if we would say, what's the weather currently in Brussels, we could add another function in here and maybe call off to the weather service, which we have in the catalog, and then make that result also appear in the conversation. Okay, so this is the end of the demo, and we also provided some resources that you can find back, some example code that you can download for free from the GitHub repository. And then there's the community for Watson and also the Devoxx chatbots, which I shown you here. You can also play around with that and let us know what you think of it. Okay, so then I think there's still time left for a couple of minutes for some questions.
Okay.
Okay. Or if there would be any other questions, you can also try on the chatbot and see if you can figure out where we are, or send us an email. We'll be here the whole week at the booth as well, so if you have additional questions. Okay, thank you.